Hey guys, how the hell are you? Time for an all-new unbiased gear review on this, the new HM808 by Airis effects. Okay, so formerly known as the Apollyon, this is the HM808. Let's go over some specs. We've got a nice heavy-duty enclosure, equally heavy-duty switch on there, kind of a yellowish-orange LED that's really, really bright. Neutrik jacks, alpha pots. We've got 4 basic controls: high, low, volume, gain. What more could you possibly want? It's just a real simple to use pedal. Let's just go right on into the tone demo. For the purposes of this tone demo, I will be utilizing my latest acquisition. This is a 1983 NJ Series BC Rich Mockingbird. It does come with a pair of DiMarzio humbuckers. We will be mainly focusing on the bridge, and for that we have a nice super distortion in there to get those kind of period correct vintage heavy metal, awesome, searing, molten, high gain, etc. tones. Okay, so we are going to use this pedal in front of a few different applications so you can see what this thing does. The very first thing we're going to do is we're going to run it into the Dover DA50, which we will be using for its cleaner tone, I should say, so you can kind of get an idea of what this pedal sounds like on its own, what it really does. And then we're going to show you where the magic happens. We're going to run it into the Marshall JCM 900 SLX as well as the Mesa triple rectifier, so you can see what this thing does in terms of being used as a boost in front of an already high gain tone. So let's get right into it. First of all, this is the cleaner tone. All the knobs facing straight up at high noon. As you can see, a lot of response comes out of those EQ knobs. The low control kind of acts more like a tightness control than anything else. When you dial it back, it tightens things up a ton. But at the same time, if you want full on boomy low end, it's got that aplenty. And as you can see, the high control is where the chainsaw really lives in this thing. So that's more or less just the chainsaw control. You dial that in accordingly and it kind of blends in that chainsaw tone a little bit. So as you can see, it doesn't do a traditional chainsaw thing like you would get if you were using an actual HM2 or something that is meant to be more like an HM2 clone. It gets kind of close. In fact, actually it gets really close, but not quite there. Not quite what an HM2 does. It's the kind of thing of if you want an HM2 tone, get an HM2 pedal. But this is meant to be a little bit different, and for that now let's try this in front of the Marshall. This is how the Marshall sounds with the settings I've got on it currently. Kind of a nice vintage high gain tone from like late 80s, early 90s kind of stuff. A lot of focus on those low mids there. Now let's kick on the pedal. Hear how it's already a lot grimier and a lot filthier. Now it's getting a lot more disgusting. A lot more of the chainsaw tone in there. Let's bring that back a little bit. Dial back that low just a bit. It's still a little boomy. And that's what that pedal does. You put it in front of an already high gain tone. and it's doing what you would want a Tube Screamer style overdrive to do. It's tightening things up. It's just barely adding in a little bit of color. I shouldn't even say barely adding in. It's definitely adding in some tone color in there, kind of changing things up a little bit, making this Marshall sound absolutely filthy. Okay, once again, let's set all the knobs to noon, and let's see what this does in front of the Mesa. Here's the tone, how it typically starts. And there we are, finally getting like true chainsaw territory. But although it's great to know that that's something this pedal can do, that's not what we're looking to get out of this. No, we are still going to dial this back, use it as a boost. So I find I've been having a lot of luck having gain about there. Too boomy of a low end, so let's bring that back a lot. And even before I touch the high control again, like, do you hear how this is already a tonal step up from your typical Tube Screamer style overdrive being used as a boost? It's just got an extra something to it. Oh yeah, right there's the sweet spot. I love that tone because it's extreme. It's given us a lot more than we would have just running a normal Tube Screamer in front of that Mesa. But at the same time, you'll notice the settings, we are dialing a lot of stuff back so that we're preventing this from going into full chainsaw territory, and we're getting something that is just kind of gnarly and honestly kind of perfect. So overall, my final thought, well, we've got a lot to unpack here. So I'm not going to lie to you. Initially, when I first plugged into this thing, I wasn't really all that impressed. And it wasn't because of the quality of the tones or anything like that. Quite the contrary. The tones were awesome. It was one of those things where it was like, whatever. It's another chainsaw pedal on the market. I kind of feel like the market's getting a little oversaturated right now. Same thing like how we're seeing with a lot of Tube Screamer style boosts and overdrives. At the same time, I was like, well, what is it that separates this? Because we've got a lot of pedals on the market that claim to totally replicate the old school Swedish chainsaw tone, and we've also got a bunch of new pedals that are coming out lately that are integrating a preamp into the mix and sort of trying to create this market that they're automatically a niche for of, hey, we've actually got a preamp here that you blend the chainsaw into, and it's supposed to be this new revolutionary thing. And where does this fit into the mix? Because it's also something where if you're using an HM2 style pedal as a boost, typically you just dime everything and then you just bring the gain down as far as you can while still getting some sort of signal, and that way you've still got the tone stack in play. Where this comes into play in the market is that it really does kind of bridge the gap between putting a tube screamer style overdrive in front of a high gain head and also having a chainsaw pedal in play. This can pump out a ton of extreme aggression, a ton of grind and grime and filth, and it sounds ugly and nasty in the most awesome ways possible. But if you really want to see what this pedal is used for, what you really need to do is start pulling everything back a little bit so that you see what this does in front of an already kick-ass high gain tone. My typical settings are kind of as you see right here. I've got the low down below 9 o'clock because I'm trying to tighten up everything. It gets really, really boomy. And I've also got the high dialed back to about maybe 1:32 o'clock because although I want a lot of the chainsaw to be coming in, I want it not to be a chainsaw tone. I want it to be something that has a little bit extra grime and filth being added to it so that I'm still getting the awesome tones of my amps, but just with extra bleh. That's what I'm doing here. Volume is maxed out. The gain is dialed back to a great extent as well. It's hovering right around 8 o'clock. What I'm getting out of this is something that's not boomy. It's grimy. It's just adding, there again, a little bit extra bleh to the mix. And that's rad. That's awesome to me because as we're trying to always find these pedals that can make our heavy extreme metal tones even more grimy and disgusting without going into full-blown HM2 territory, it's kind of tough because if you start messing with like the EQ knobs on the HM2, first of all there's the psychological thing of, come on man, it's supposed to be dimed. But then there's also the thing of, let's be honest, those knobs don't exactly sound all that great when you start turning them back. The HM2 really wants to be dimed. With this, I think Rick at Airis has finally figured out the secret sauce. I think he's finally figured out how to make it so that you can tweak the chainsaw tone and still allow the natural character of your amp to come through there again and one last time just with a little bit extra bleh. But Arnold, what are you drinking today? There again, I am still on my diet, so I'm still kind of foregoing the beer a little bit here. I'm having the occasional one, but all the same, I'm making a lot of progress on my diet, so let's just continue to explore some whiskeys on this channel. There again, if you want to see more in-depth reviews on a lot of these bottles that I'm checking out, head to my newest channel, youtube.com/ArnoldDrinks, where I get to actually check out some of this stuff in a little bit more depth. This is a bottle that I love, love, love. This is a store pick of Doc Swinson's Cask Strength Single Barrel Rye. This is something special because I love rye whiskeys. I've been finding that I enjoy the variety of rye whiskeys that are out there, and I think that there's definitely some stuff out there that behaves a little bit differently. Like rye as a category is way more varied out there than people give it credit for, and this is no exception. This is something that, to my recollection, kind of eschews a lot of more traditional notes that I find in a lot of ryes and instead focuses primarily on one in particular. Let's dive in. Heavy on the alcohol burn right off the bat. It is a cask strength bottle at 57.8% ABV, so you've definitely got some proofage that you're playing with here. Tons of rye bread, tons of rye spice. You got a little bit of that cinnamon note that you're getting out of a lot of other rye whiskeys. But the big thing I'm getting this right off the bat is like fresh peppercorn. Right on the aroma, fresh peppercorn. Let's go in for a sip. God damn, that is a pepper bomb of a rye whiskey. This is definitely one of those ones where if you hear what certain ryes are like about how they're spicy, you know, you don't think that that would be for you. This will probably not change your opinion. So much pepper in that flavor profile. It is very, very hot, and the alcohol burn is definitely kind of helping that flavor note push itself forward. But if you're like me and you like checking out a lot of different ryes, the finished ryes, the more cinnamony kind of ryes, the more bready kind of ryes, the more sweeter ryes, and now this absolute brick in the face of pepper spiciness, this is an absolutely fantastic bottle. And by the way, when I say pepper spiciness, this is not a flavored whiskey. This is just straight rye whiskey. It is something where you pick out the various flavor notes here or there, like, oh, this reminds me of this reminds me of that. And this is a lot of fresh black peppercorn. But it is so good though. Seriously, if you ever see one of these store-picked Doc Swinson single barrel ryes, pick one up if you're into rye whiskeys, if you're into that spiciness, because this is mind-blowingly good. So thank you guys so very much for tuning in. Please remember to like this video, subscribe to this channel. Tons more metal and guitar-oriented content come. And as always, remember, take what you do seriously, but do not take yourselves too seriously.